This is the Note Closer Show, where you get the latest developments in distressed note investing and learn the secrets of how you can control millions of dollars worth of property for pennies on the dollar. Get educated and entertained by someone who has closed thousands of deals and lives to support you in achieving the same. Now, here's your host, CEO of We Close Notes, Scott Carson.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Hey, welcome to the Note Closer Show. We're excited to have you guys today. As always, we've got my amazing staff of marketing minions here in the office with me as we are rock and rolling on this episode. But this episode is kind of a continuation of one we did a couple days ago where we discussed due diligence. And on the previous episode, as a quick little recap, we talked about due diligence on the front end, pulling initial values, calling to check taxes, those kind of things. And we went through the note evaluation short checklist. And I want to thank all those that have reached out and asked for a copy of the due diligence checklist. Awesome. Just emailed out a few more this morning. But what we will discuss today is, what do you do after your bid is accepted or countered? All right. So the first step, which happens a lot of time, is when somebody gets their bid accepted, they have the OS method. And the OS method is, oh shit, what do I do now? Okay. So the thing to keep in mind is not to stress out. Okay. One of the things I always see a lot of note investors do is they only submit like 1, 2, or 3 bids on a big tape, and then all 3 of them don't get accepted, and they're like, oh, I didn't get anything. This is why I tell people, submit bids on 10, 15 if you can. Even if you don't have the full amount of funds, you never know what's going to happen during your due diligence process, especially after the bids are accepted and you're looking through things that you may end up having to kill a few. All right. So I always say submit bids on more than what you expect, and you'll be surprised at what falls through the cracks. So let's quick recap. We talked about pulling values and checking values initially online. We're trying to get a realtor to go out and look at things. Now, the minute you get a yes, if the seller calls and tells you, hey, your bid is accepted, or you get an email that the bid is accepted, you better get on your horse and get a realtor or somebody to drive by the property. Now, the easiest ways to get a realtor to drive by is when you could pay a realtor to go do it. You can pay for a BPO if you want to. The big thing about paying for a BPO is make sure, I think the best way to do is use a local realtor. There are some nationwide companies that offer up BPO services. I am not the biggest fan of those, for the reason is they have their vendors, and oftentimes those realtors get signed up for stuff, and it's their assistant that's pulling the numbers. They're not even getting out of the car a lot of the time when they drive by looking at the property. So anytime you can have a local realtor go by and do a desktop CMA for you after they've driven by the property and gotten photos for you is much better than having a nationwide company. Yes, it might take a little bit more work from you on your part to jump on Zillow.com or ActiveRain.com or Realtor.com to find somebody, but I think it's going to be much higher value as far as getting the value to you in a much more clear and precise number. Now, a couple other tricks that we use to get realtors to go out, we jump on Meetup.com and look for realtors in the specific areas. A lot of my students will use the online message portals that we use in our workshops through Basecamp.com to ask if anybody knows a realtor nearby that can go drive by and take a look at it. And that's anytime you can have a network of realtors, it helps. Now, this is also why I tell most people, just focus on 5 or 6 markets to begin with, so you're not being overwhelmed trying to get 20 realtors in 20 different markets, because it can take a while to get stuff. All right. And yes, we do pay sometimes $50 to $100 for a BPO. All right. Sometimes if we can't get a realtor to go by and drive by, we will pay a company called We Go Look to drive by the property. And we can often tell. Now, in a case where we have to pay, $99 to We Go Look to go take a look at it, I'm going to make sure that it's got to be in pristine condition. All right. While We Go Look's not going to give you a true value, they will take a tremendous amount of pictures and photos of the property, which will help you when you're looking at your, oh yeah, it's in good shape, versus, oh, it's not in good shape, where it's not in the greatest of neighborhoods. All right. A couple of things to keep in mind. Look, if you can take the time to go drive by the asset, if you're looking at 10 or 12 assets in the same area, it might be worth just buying a Southwest Airlines ticket, jumping on a plane, flying up there for a day, looking around and coming back. Sometimes it's worth doing that if you're buying multiple assets. But if it's one or two assets in different areas, look, get on the phone and get a realtor to do this. Now, one of the things you have to keep in mind is, look, even if I don't wait around for approval on a lot of things. A lot of times I'm having realtors drive by ahead of time, especially if I know that I'm one of the few ones bidding on the assets. Now, if it's up for auction or they're submitting bids for a week or so, I'm not going to spend a lot of money on that aspect of it because I don't want to waste realtors' time. But if once it's approved, you better bet your butt that we're getting on the phones, getting realtors going, especially if we got 7 days or, less than 2 business weeks to close on the asset. Always have a realtor do that. Another thing that you want to order immediately is an ownership and encumbrance report. Now, we talked briefly about this on Due Diligence Part 1, is that you're not going to order that in the front end. It doesn't make any sense until you actually have, written stuff. Now, one thing, I would not order an O&E until I literally get the contract in. And the minute I get a contract, then I'm going to jump on ProTitleUSA.com. I'm going to reach out to Alex Godofsky, say, hey, I need to get one of these ordered. Now, an O&E report is not a full title report. An O&E is an ownership and encumbrance report, which tells you what's on that property with the most current owner. Okay? It's important. You don't need to know title going all the way back to when God created the earth. All right? You just need to know going back to when that loan was created. And an O&E is basically 85, roughly $100. Usually takes about 72 hours. The thing to keep in mind is the more rural the location, the longer it's going to take for your O&E. It's also going to be harder for you to get a realtor to go out there. So try to avoid rural locations because sometimes there may be just one person in the county that has pulled the abstract for the for Pro Title. Now, why do I like Pro Title USA? They do most of the O&E title reports for all these big Fannie Mae trades. They've been doing literally hundreds of thousands of O&Es over the last year, and they're a phenomenal company, easy to work with. Alex runs a really good ship over there in Pennsylvania where they're having that. So pull on your title. That's the third key element. We talked about values, and we also talked about calling to check taxes on the front end too. That's very important to do that, to do before your bid's accepted so you know what's owed. Now, the thing is, some cities, some states, or some counties aren't always online, so you've got to make phone calls, trying to track this, track the pearls down at the county to get the information that you need. And sometimes that can drag on a little bit. I get it. It may take an extra day or two, or if you're getting tape on a Friday, you may not be able to get that answer until Monday or Tuesday of the following week. And if your bids are due basically by Monday, look, just get a bid in, and most sellers will understand that you've got to fade your bid down some. And by fading your bid means reducing your bid by, they say the value is worth 80, but you've come back and find that the value is actually 60. Well, of course, you're going to reduce your bid that you initially sent in by the numbers that you discover. Now, the idea is just to share that information. I'm a big believer in full disclosure. The only thing I'm not going to share is if the values come back higher than the hedge fund or the seller believes. I'm going to just say, yes, I can fund ASAP. All right. Now, the thing to also keep in mind, besides pulling title reports and getting a realtor out to put eyes and ears on the property, one thing that we really love to do is call the county to check out utilities. Calling to see, is the power on, is the water on? Not every county is going to be able to share with you the power company, because once they deregulated it, there's a lot of other companies out there, but the water companies and the sewers are still managed by the counties and the cities. So that's a great source to go to find out if there's outstanding bills, if it's on time, if there's a payment plan, those kind of things. And oftentimes the city or the county will be able to direct you to other, like the gas company, if it's a gas property, and that's, it's pretty easy to find out if it's on or off. All right. So, another point to the BPOs, everybody, kind of coming back to that, is try to have your realtor take a picture of the box, the power box. If there's a glass globe on the outside, great. That usually means power is on. If there's no glass globe, there's a big gaping hole where that would go. I can guarantee you the power is not on. All right. That doesn't mean that they're not burying extension cords with the neighbors and stealing power and water, but I've had that happen in a few houses. But have them try to take a picture of the box if at all possible, especially on the side of the house. The back of the house, not always the easiest thing to do. All right. So checking values, making sure that's good, paying for that. You're also, if you're going to order BPO, the only thing you can order is an exterior BPO. You're not going to be able to order a full appraisal because you're not going to be able to get inside the property. Keep that in mind. All right. Now, if it is a vacant property, it doesn't mean you can't peek in the windows. And if the door is wide open, the back has been vacant for a while, okay, you might be able to get in. But for the most part, you're not going to be getting inside. This is why we focused on owner-occupied assets or occupied assets, because, hey, if there's toys in the front yard or a flag outside or plants hanging, and it's in pretty decent condition on the outside, most of the time it's in pretty decent condition on the inside. All right. One of the things that we like to try to do is try to get the realtor to drive by at 2 different times. One, sometime throughout the day. If there's no car at home, then they can peek in the windows. And then try to go by either early in the morning or around 5 o'clock at night or 6 o'clock at night and see if there's cars at home. Because if there's cars in the driveway during the day, they may not have a job. If there's not, but there's a car at night, then they're probably working somewhere. Now, oftentimes, when you're looking at the collateral file, because this comes into play with the next aspect of due diligence, is once your bid's accepted, oftentimes the seller will send over a electronic collateral file, and we call that a soft file. They're not going to send you the hard physical file. They're literally going to send you the electronic copy. You can dive into looking at that. Then if you don't have the borrower's name, then you've got that, especially if it's a contract for deed. If you should have had the borrower's name if it was a non-performing note, that's when you're doing your internet sleuthing, jumping on Facebook or LinkedIn to see if the borrower has anything. It's when you're doing a white pages search to see if there's a phone number that is coordinated. And one of the things that I do, we talked about this early on, is I'll make a phone call just to see if it's a working number. If they answer, I'll ask for the borrower's name, but I'll just say I'm calling, trying to track somebody else down. I don't talk to them about, I'm buying your note. That's a big snafu. Do not talk to the borrowers about buying their note if you don't own it yet. That's a big violation, and you can get fined for that, okay? Now, when you're looking at collateral files, you want to make sure the collateral file is complete from the sale. That means you're going to have the original note, copy of the deed, copy of the mortgage, all associated assignments of mortgage, and allonges that go along with assignments for every time that note has been sold. So if the note has been sold 4 times, you need to have 4 assignments of mortgage and at least 4 allonges along the way. Now, an allonge is just an endorsement. And what used to happen is the banks would literally sign the back page of the mortgage when they shipped it off. But with servicing companies and everything going online, they had to come up with a different type of endorsement. So basically, an allonge is just a one single page sheet. Doesn't have to be notarized, just endorsing. It's like signing the back of a check. So the endorsement. So if there's note's been sold 4 different companies and it's coming to me, I need to see 4 assignments. Now, if there's an assignment or an allonge missing, don't freak out. Just talk to the seller. Say, hey, is this missing? Is this in the hard collateral file? Because oftentimes electronic files that have been scanned, they're forwarding over the old scan from maybe a sale or 2 ago when the newest assignments have not been put in the file. So you want to try to have the seller scan everything in the collateral file and send it over. Now, don't worry if you don't know what the hell you're looking at. There are companies out there like Richmond & Monroe, Orion, CSC that will actually do a collateral view for you. Now, Richmond & Monroe is probably the most well-known at it. I think they charge $25 a file just to look at your collateral file and tell you what's missing. This is something you want to do definitely at first if you're not used to it, because it's important to see what's in the file. If you don't know what to look for, have a professional, pay the $25, and Richmond & Monroe can usually do it relatively fast, 72 to 48 hours. I would not have your attorney do it because they're going to charge you $125 to $245 or $250 an hour to do a collateral review, and they're not getting around in a timely fashion. Okay. Next thing that you need to be doing on due diligence aspect of this is let's just do this. You check the collateral. You've got property values. You already checked taxes. You called on the utilities. But what else can you do? Servicing records is an important thing. Yeah, this is why you always want to ask who's servicing the loan. And oftentimes the seller should be able to provide you with servicing comments, servicing notes to help you identify. Because there's been times we've bought notes when we see in the servicing notes, a borrower showed interest in doing a loan mod. Borrowers expressed interest in short selling. Borrower is willing to deed the property over. And we have seen things in the servicing notes that the seller has missed, and it's led to good aspects, good stuff for us. So that's one thing you always want to do is have your servicer take a look at it. Or you look at the servicing notes and read the files. There's some great things you can miss by just looking through the collateral file, especially when you see notes of hardship letters or what's going on with the file on the borrowers. You often, especially if they've ever filed a short sale file or trying to do a loan modification, there's often a lot of information that tells the story behind the story. Now, a great nugget that you can get in the collateral file is if you get the original loan application from the borrower will show up about half the time. It's not a requirement. It's not a deal killer if you don't get it. So don't kill your deal if you don't get it. That's what I'm trying to get at. But if it comes in there, that gives you so much relevant information to the borrower. Where were they working, their social security numbers, their previous creditors, what they had in savings, retirement. It's literally everything behind the kimono, everything beneath the kimono for the borrower. So you can check in to see, hey, what were they working? What happened before it happened? Do they own other real estate that's attached to them? That comes in handy as well. And you go from there. That's another thing that I would look at too, is just do a quick county appraisal search for the borrower's name to see if they own any of the real estate in that same county, because that can work in your favor when you're buying this asset and working out with a borrower. In some cases, we have found borrowers had a rental portfolio. So we use that leverage of saying, listen, you need to work with us. Otherwise, we're going to foreclose. And what we don't get, we're going to slap a judgment against every other property you have here. Okay. That often makes them come to the table and make things happen. Now, if the borrower's filed bankruptcy in the previous, jump on pacer.gov and pull the old bankruptcy file. That will tell you a lot of information as well, because the borrower's got to disclose what they owe, all their creditors, what they think the property is worth, what do they have available. And that's a really cheap piece of due diligence to download a government file to find out what they think the property is worth and all that other items. Okay. So pretty easy thing to do. Now, if you start seeing that numbers change where values differentiate, seller thinks it's worth 100 and you think it's worth 75, you're going to have some kind of conflict there. All right. So what I recommend you do if you're countering is to provide a lot of information. Provide the BPO if you got it. Provide the desktop CMA. Provide the photos to the seller. All right. Show them that, hey, there's actually $4,000 in back taxes owed, not $400. All right. The more due diligence you provide to the seller, the more they're going to respect you and take into consideration your counter, all right, or your bid fade to make sense. Because listen, most of these asset managers have hundreds of thousands of assets they're working through on a regular basis, some hundreds a month, sometimes thousands a month. They're not going to have a chance to review every single asset. And so depending on what they're pulling their values, if they're just doing quick high end, they have a lot more flexibility in that. Now, sometimes some sellers have assets under consignment from a bigger seller where the seller doesn't want to deal with, Bob and Mary Smith on a one-off basis. But like a seller or a broker in this case, I work with many brokers who are legitimate, not joker brokers. They've got a specific hard price that they've got to try to get. Maybe it's a flat 35% of UPB across the board or 60% of values. You have to be the more information that you give them on your bid and the asset, the better it works in your favor. To not only will the seller respect you in the morning, but they'll also understand that your bid is solid, so that your bid comes in, you get all this information. They got some bid that's crazy overly priced. They may realize that person hasn't done as much due diligence as you as, and their bid's probably going to fall out later on once they really do the deep dive in their due diligence. So the biggest thing I can tell you like this, always get photos, always have a collateral review if you can, always pull an ONI. Because an ownership and a commerce report will tell you if there's other outstanding liens that are going to get wiped off. This has helped us reduce our bid down. Now, it'll also show other liens. Okay, there's an IRS tax lien. Well, don't worry about that. That doesn't justify killing your bid, because you can have that IRS tax lien removed. It just takes a little bit extra 30 to 60 days to get done. Now, the other thing that can't come off, but obviously talked about this before, is property taxes. Sometimes city lien, things like that, are attached to the property as well and won't go away, so you can often reduce your bids by that. Do we have any questions from anybody currently right now before we dive into something else here?
Yeah. So Donovan Lucio asked, speaking of sticking to your markets, how do you feel about Arkansas?
How do I feel about the piggy state?
Razorbacks.
Razorback Nation. Look, I'll tell you this right now. I don't have a problem with Arkansas. I just don't see a lot of assets there for some weird reason. Okay, I see a little bit in Little Rock. I'll see some in Bentonville around by where Walmart corporate headquarters are. But honestly, I don't see a lot of stuff in Arkansas. Now, the biggest things I will tell people about specifically markets is if you can find a market in a bigger city, one of the major metroplexes, that's great. In a city that's got a major college, that's even better. Okay? And if you start getting down to small, like sub 10,000 people towns, you'd be very careful about it. Okay? This is why you always want to talk to a local realtor to get more information on that asset and if it makes sense. Just because you get an asset, a pretty looking property, if it's in a podunk town, doesn't mean it's a good thing. Okay? So Arkansas is okay. Don't have a problem with it. Just depends on where you're buying in Arkansas. Okay? Easiest thing to do to check how many people live in a city, how many people live in Little Rock, Arkansas, and just see what it says. Okay? I know it's silly, but you'd be surprised how many times people don't realize that Google is a massive god of information. Okay? How do I get the information? You Google it. Okay? Now, a couple of things to keep in mind is you've got to look at your timing. I know a lot of people are like, okay, this due diligence sounds great, but what about raising private capital? Well, you should always be marketing, ABM, always be marketing, okay? The beautiful thing is if you do your due diligence right, your due diligence will act and help you raise capital. Now, if you're brand new, I'm sure you're sitting there thinking, well, yeah, I what am I only have 3 days or 7 days to raise capital from the time it gets accepted? And that's in that case, yes. But if you're sharing your information and what you've got going on in the life of Joe Blow, note investor, or Nancy, note investor, okay? Sharing on social media or sharing an email, hey, I'm making offers in 8, and here's the pictures of those 8. Before you get offers approved, you'll start getting people interested in what you're doing. You're getting investors teed up and ready to roll. And I see so many entrepreneurs who wait to send an email out to their database until they get a yes. And it just delays them raising. And then they're in a stressful mode, trying to raise capital up to the last minute. And that's not the best thing to do. Look, if you can market ahead of time, get your borrowers ready to roll, not your borrowers, but your private investors ready to roll, share what's going on, network with what's going on. And you'll be often find that you have people then ready to write a check for you when you're ready versus, oh, now I got to raise capital. And then you're already 2 weeks behind the 8 ball because now you're doing due diligence and trying to raise capital at the same time. The two don't always work well because sometimes you're going to sit here, especially if you're working full time, you don't have time to raise capital. So you've got to do the little things on a weekly basis to really help you market while you're doing your due diligence. Now, who would rather just get an email from you and say, hey, I got a deal, can you find my deal? No. The idea is setting up your process. Hey, we're working through 100 assets. Hey, we submitted offers on 20 of those assets. Oh, hey, we got 10 countered back. Hey, we settled on these 5. Who's ready to grow? Now, that's 4 potential emails that are going out there talking about your story over maybe a 2-week period. Well, that's going to get you to that magical email where 80% of the sales are made after the 5th contact. All right? Sorry, I got weed eating company or the Monday morning manicurist here out here doing some work here at the office. But anyway, so that's the initial aspect of now. If collateral file comes back good, the value's good, taxes are good, then you're closing. All right. Now, the seller will provide you wiring instructions. They'll actually send over a contract, usually somewhere between 10 and 21 pages long. Don't flip out, okay? It's normal. You don't have to buy yourself a day or 2 extra once you sign the contract just to having your attorneys review it, okay? And then also, one thing to keep in mind is how fast your buyer, the seller, wants you to fund. If they want you to fund within, say, 2 hours after you sign the contract, you got to be very careful about that. This is why you need to know where your money is coming from beforehand. Because if it's going to come from an IRA account, it may drag on a couple days because of transferring funds or getting things set up and that kind of stuff. So be mindful of that, all right? Especially if it's coming in on a Friday, well, you're not going to be able to get much stuff done Friday. It may take Monday, Tuesday, and then fund Wednesday the following week versus trying to fund on Monday beforehand. So We had that happen before. Seller sent us a contract, and they sent it to us on a late Thursday evening. I was out of the office. Didn't see it till Friday morning. I'm like, listen, I'm not going to be able to fund this by Monday. It's going to have to drag out till Tuesday or Wednesday. And they're like, oh, just why? And this is the reason why. I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. Let's get it done. So the beautiful thing is to communicate what's going on. Look, your database is doing due diligence on you as well as you doing due diligence on these assets. And how do you build confidence? You share what's going on. You share the values. You share the collateral file. You share the rent-o-meter view of what the rent rates are in the market or what the true value is. That becomes a nice, solid file for you with everything you have that you can provide to a funder or your Shark Tank to get people to fund stuff because you've provided confidence that you actually have done your due diligence. I can't tell you how many times I see assets when somebody wants me to buy an asset, I'm like, okay, or help them with a deal. I'm like, well, did you pull this? Well, no. Do you have a picture of the property? No. Do you even have a street view picture? No. Then what the F are you doing? You're just wasting time. If you have not pulled that initial information, you called city, if you called check taxes, do you have a realtor driving by? No. Well, then that's my answer to you, whether we're going to fund the deal. No. Okay. But if you yes, okay, let's talk about those numbers. Let's dive into that and then go from there. So thing to keep in mind, if you're making 10 offers, you're probably going to end up with somewhere between 1 and 2 accepted that you end up closing on. That's a lot of information, a lot of assets that you don't close on, but that number gets better over time, and that's what you have to keep in mind. Submitting 10 offers, you may get 1 or 2 accepted that you end up finally working through, that you end up closing on. If you make 10 offers, you get 10 accepted, you either offered too much, okay, or you're an anomaly for the most part. Now, one thing to keep in mind as well, all right, look, a lot of people overthink that aspect of things. Like I said before, a lot of people won't make multiple offers because they only have so much money. Look, if you only got so much money, you get more accepted, then do an opportunity and send a freaking email out to your database. We had that happen just recently. Somebody only had enough money for one of the 4 assets they finally got accepted on. I'm like, okay, so closing that one. Are you doing an email blast out to your those assets to database? Use those approved assets as opportunities to raise capital. Okay? Having a good picture, say, hey, I got this approved. Here's where it's looking at. It could be a 20% yield that we could split. It could be a performing note that, hey, are you looking for 10% of your money and it's performing to you at 20? Great. Get somebody cheap money in at 10%. Get them paying their flat interest rate at 10% to them, and you're keeping the other 8 to 10%. And you have basically infinite return on investment for you. A lot of people struggle with that. Another thing that a lot of people don't realize is if you get an offer accepted, use your network, use your database. Hey, I've got a deal accepted. I can't take it down. Anybody interested in jumping in and paying me a referral fee or a wholesale fee? There's plenty of opportunities to close on notes. Now, what you do not want to do is go through all this due diligence, get a seller ready to sign up for a contract, and then tell them that you don't have the money lined up. Now I got to raise capital now. No, you should have been raising capital all along. Okay, you will potentially burn bridges by not doing the right things and raising capital along your process. We had that happen. Somebody emailed me, hey man, I'm trying to close this deal tomorrow. I'm like, and did you send an email to your database? No. Okay. Let's go through the numbers. Do the numbers make sense? You're paying 65 cents on the dollar. Is it paying? Yeah, it could be a reperforming note. Well, what's the yield off the reperforming side? 6. Like, that's not a good interest rate. You're not going to raise any capital with that. Why'd you make a bid on that? Well, I like the property. Well, liking the property doesn't make a lot of sense if the interest in the ROI is not there. And most importantly, too, guys, is keep in mind, if you're going through your due diligence and your numbers and you're figuring your stuff in your ROI calculators, if the numbers don't make sense, don't try to squeeze a round peg in a square hole. Just move on. Kill it. If you find that the hedge fund's value at 100 isn't accurate and yours is at 50, tell them why. And they tell you, no, we want to stick with 100, then don't do the deal. Just move on and say next. Next. Okay? And don't get discouraged. Look, sometimes I know some people who've made 30, 40, 50 bids before they ever got their first one accepted. All right? Sometimes it takes time. If you're not getting stuff accepted, then you need to get on the phone and talk to somebody. Talk to the seller. Why was my stuff not accepted? Why is that? Why is it? Some sellers are selling assets that they have to sell at a price that just doesn't make sense for us. There's some sellers out there that are, I'll give you an example. My buddies over at Gemini Capital Managers, Jack Krupe, basically a BK Chapter 13 fund. So they're buying these notes that are BK Chapter 13s at basically performing note prices. Well, not every one of these continues to perform. A lot of them, some of them will drop off. Well, the minute they come non-performing, he's got to try to sell these off. Well, they're selling at a point where they can't take a loss. They're trying to get somebody to make an overpriced bid on it. A lot of them don't make sense. They're non-performing. I got to foreclose. I'm not going to pay 75% of value. And he gets that. But, they're offered up for sale for somebody that might be interested. Look, it doesn't make sense to me. Just move on. There are some sellers I don't buy from at all, but it doesn't mean they're bad guys. Okay. Now, one thing important to keep in mind is if a seller tells you your bid is approved, get a contract ASAP. This is one thing I do not like that happens sometimes in the industry is people will get bids accepted and suddenly come Monday or Tuesday, the asset got sold off. Jen's blood is boiling right now with me just saying that here. We had one particular seller that pulled shenanigans like that, and we will not do business with them anymore out of Southern California. Yeah. We will not do business with them anymore because they had to. We would send bids out to our mastermind members. They get bids accepted, and suddenly between now being Friday and Monday, the asset was sold over the weekend.
Not just one.
Not just once. I understand it happening once, especially if you got multiple sellers or multiple people in your company doing stuff. Not once or twice, but over a dozen times. And when it happens more than that, so then I'm lied to about things. We don't play that. Okay. Another big thing to keep in mind too, as you get ready to close, it's okay to ask for references. If you've never heard of a company before, ask. I've had like 4 or 5 people call me in the last couple days. Hey, have you heard of this person that I'm buying a note from? Have you heard of them? Okay. They have a cheesy website. Okay. Talk to somebody. Hey, have you heard of this individual? Have you heard good things about him? Have you not heard good things about it? Always double check on that aspect. Last thing you want to do is wire money into a black hole that you never end up seeing the money from. And that doesn't happen very often unless you're not just paying attention to who you're dealing with. So any other questions, comments, Nicole? Everybody's liking the due diligence aspect of this?
Cody Cox, that ass hattery.
Yeah, that ass hattery, because Cody's one of the ones that had it happen to, which is unfortunately with bids being accepted. That's why we just don't deal with it anymore. So, yeah, just don't do business with those people. You have the choice to do business with them or don't do business with them. And one thing to keep in mind, if you're finding that bids are being overbid, sellers are selling stuff above what you would pay, just move on. Find another seller. There's plenty out there. All right. So, another thing that you will want to check on as well with Hurricane Irma, and our hearts go out to everybody in Florida who's dealing with that, and Puerto Rico and all this stuff. Please be safe. Is call to check how much insurance is going to cost. Okay. Call Ross Diversified Insurance out of Orange, California, or jump on and check out reiguard.com. Find out what it's going to cost for you to put a forced place insurance policy on the property temporarily. Okay. That can help you and save you a lot of money in the long run. All right. Now, if they do, the borrowers do end up providing and showing that they had insurance on the property, you can always have that property removed off your policy and you got a refund for the insurance you paid. But thing to keep in mind, look, call, get a quote. It's going to be helpful for you in the long run to have that and know what it is and have that ready to roll in place the minute you fund. Okay. Now, another thing that you may want to look at too, kind of as you're closing, is you may want to put you're going to actually have to reach out to your servicing company, get that relationship set up, whether you're using Madison or somebody else, Madison Management out of New Jersey or Clear Spring or somebody like that. Get that set up before you fund, so it'll make it easier when the servicing transfer happens. Okay. And if you're going to use a special servicer like the law office of Daniel Singer or Polaris to work on your assets, get on the phone to them ahead of time. And actually, I would even potentially send the list of assets you're getting ready to close onto them so they can start pulling some initial new numbers. I would share, if you got any phone numbers from those borrowers or anything you came across a collateral file, send that to them, because that will help them be much more effective in getting right party contact right out the door. Okay. Questions, comments from anybody? No, everybody's all kind of quiet this Monday. All right. So one thing to keep in mind today is a anniversary of sorts. It's not a great anniversary. Today being Patriot Day. If you're listening on iTunes and or Stitcher and things like that, obviously it's a few days later than that. But yeah, one thing I always try to remember is where I was on this day 16 years ago. And I was actually working for Enterprise Rent-A-Car, fresh out of college. Been married for less than a month, a couple of weeks actually at the time. And I remember how I felt that morning when everything happened. I think it's unfortunate what happened. It totally is. No, I don't believe there was a conspiracy by the government to make it happen. All right. It's sad that exists. I think we see more of that happening throughout the world with terrorist threats and things like that. The biggest thing I can tell you, no matter what your politics is if you see a police officer or a first responder or somebody in the military, please thank them. You may not always agree, and I agree there's bad apples in every bunch, but the bad apples are a minority, not the majority of personnel out there. Okay? So we have people that are out there fighting for our country, fighting on a street-by-street basis in some cases to make America as safe as possible. Yes, there are some atrocities. I get that. All right. There's some people that there are some police officers I would not shake their hand, but 99% of the people out there are good people who show up every day and they're willing to do a job that most of us are not willing to do. And to those past and current military and past and present first responders, we want to thank you for what you do. And just want you to know that, hey, we are big supporters of our first responders and our past and present military, that if you are interested in taking one of our virtual note buying workshops, please email me personally at scott@weclosenotes.com, and we'd be glad to comp you in to our next virtual workshop as our way of saying yes and giving back to you. No cost, but it's our way to say thank you for making America safe and give us the rights to do what we do on a daily basis. So any questions, comments from anybody else out there? We're good? So, all right, guys, the biggest thing about due diligence, okay, get on it. Don't be lackadaisical about it. If you're having a hard time calling realtors and you're waiting for a realtor to respond in 72 hours, fire their ass and get somebody else to do it. If it's taking longer than you expect for an O&E to come in, that may be a red flag to you. If it's in a smaller community, you probably need to cancel that bid, all right? Your ROI calculators are important, but you also got to put in a final line on this. Remember, we talked about this on the first part of due diligence. The numbers can make sense, but if it's in a freaking podunk town and it's 300 days on the market, kill it. Move on to something else. All right? Don't do a deal just to do a deal. All right? The more due diligence you do on assets, the better you can get at it and the more you can understand it. Okay? But don't close on a deal just to close a deal. Don't chase bad money with good. Okay? I know a lot of people get so tied into their business model that they're not be flexible. Be flexible. All right. One of the things that I look at the ROI calculators is, hey, if it's going to be a performing deal, great. It's going to work out great. It's got to work out there. It's also got to work out if I'm going to take a foreclosure or deed in lieu. All right. Those are the most important things. And then I also look at rental numbers. You know, some people like to hold a portfolio. And when I get ROI with portfolio, you got to realize if it's in a longer foreclosure process state, it's going to take even longer. It may make more sense than to sell it as an REO and get rid of it and double down and get that money back in and double down with two different assets. So let your numbers look at it. Be smart about the asset. Don't get OTSC syndrome. Oh, that's so cute. Okay. Hashtag, oh, that's so cute syndrome. Okay. OTSC syndrome. We'll do that as a tweetable moment, but keep that in mind, everybody. Look at your numbers. Get the documents behind it to make it, and come up with a good collateral file, a good due diligence file for you. Because the more you know about an asset, the more effective you're going to be able to talk about the deal, and your funding sources will also be much more confident in what you're doing. So, and be willing to fund a lot more deals because they know your process and they see your process, and they're comfortable with that. So, we hope everybody has a great day, good afternoon, good evening. Go out there and make something happen. And that will kind of wrap it up for where we're at today on the Note Closure Show podcast. So thanks for being a part. Thanks for those questions. And we'll see you all at the top, everybody.